Bueno, vamos con la segunda ponencia de este séptimo encuentro de Filosofía del Derecho de UPF y ahora con la ponencia que nos presentan a dúo híbrido además, entre presencial y online, Vincenza, Falletti y Nicola, Abate, sobre Reliance upon policymakers, the force and the experts and the claim of legitimacy, con contraponencia de Carolina Fernández Blanco. Así que por 40 minutos, nuestro tiempo, y muchas gracias por venir.
Muchas gracias a ti. Y antes de empezar, un pequeño disclaimer. Yo hablo más o menos y entiendo castellano, y Nicola también, pero como hemos trabajado todo esto en inglés y hay muchos términos que tampoco conocía en inglés, entonces en castellano no sé, voy a presentar en inglés y después Nicola va a hacer el debate, y si algo no queda claro lo podemos intentar explicar mejor en castellano, aunque con un acento bastante raro, pero vamos a intentarlo. Y entonces, change of personality.
Anche in italiano.
Just to give a bit of background, this is a working paper. Actually, it's just an idea that me and my colleague, who is not present physically but is present in our screen, at some point he will appear, we are working on, and me and Nicola, we are doing the PhD in law under the supervision of the iconic José Juan Moreso, and we are academic enemy, me and Nicola. We work more or less on the same topics, but we disagree on everything. So once we had this very folkloristic Italian-style conversation, fighting, and then at some point we arrived to a shared conclusion, and we said, my God, this is shocking, we have to put it on paper, so you cannot take it back. And that's what we are trying to do, to put in paper this. As said, is a really first draft, so it's not completed, there are a lot of things changing, but we will try to do our best to explain what we agree on. So the title is, and also this will change, is already changed, but for now is Trust in Policymakers, the Force of Expert and the Claim of Legitimacy. So in this conversation, we were worried about this very well studied and very well developed theme of the expertise in the European Union. There is a lot of work on this already, but assuming that legitimacy, it's democratic legitimacy, we assume this, otherwise it's another conference. Assuming this, and assuming that we as European Union are every day more relying on experts, and that decisions are taken every day more by experts, we were, and this provoke at some level some problems of legitimacy, we were trying to understand, but what about the European Parliament? That is the only elected body that we have. Can it solve some problem of legitimacy internalizing the expertise? So this is the main leading research question for all the paper. And the structure, what we will present today is first of all a description of what is going on, why the experts, they have today so much power. So we will describe how this happened. We will talk of what is the expertization of politics, and then we will try to investigate the role of the European Parliament. We will try to understand how we should or can cope with this problematic, and then we will shift to a theoretical level, and we will categorize all that we have described it, and relying it on the legitimacy theory. And finally, we will do our claim. We will present our model. The methodology we used, it's mixed. We have, as said, first a descriptive analysis. So we will try to describe what is going on. Then we have something that is not really in vogue in this kind of paper, but we have actually an empirical analysis. We have conducted some interviews with the member of the European Parliament and the Commission. Why so? Because we noticed that there is a black hole in the literature of the procedure. Why? There is a lot of normative discussion, but everything that happened inside the European Parliament and the European Commission actually is scripted, because these are convention, everything should be more or less open. We should know everything, but it's very complicated to know. So through the interview, we want to try to fill the gap and try to understand how it really works. Disclaimer also here, for now, we have just 2 interviews, but in May we will do all the other interviews. So I don't know, maybe the paper will change completely. I will let you know. And finally, as said, we have a theoretical analysis. So we will investigate the theory of legitimacy and try to connect it to everything that we said. Why we have this mixed methodology? Because we noticed that how often happen in academia, there are a lot of areas that describe the same phenomenon but without communicating with each other. So we have a purely theoretical analysis on the justification of expertise, or the epistemic role that they have and whatever. We have just normative analysis on the normative justification of the shift of power to expertise, or just analytical or political scientist type of analysis that describe just a phenomenon and its consequences. So where do we stand, in which area we fall, I don't really know. I think that the aim, the contribution that we want to give is to connect all these dots, because in the end we are analyzing a same phenomenon, so it's right at some point to join these dots. So I start, as said, our main concern is the expertise in the European Union. More precisely, the power that experts are acquiring, the normative power that they are acquiring. And even though it's true that experts and expert groups, they always had a central role since the inception of the European Union project, it's also true that at some point they acquired a prominence role. When? My friend, the political scientists, they more or less all agree that there is a tipping point, that in 2008 we have possibly all the delegation of all the normative power to the executives and so to experts. Why so? Why in 2008? They say that from 2008 on, we started this period of crisis, of European crisis. So everything started with the Eurozone crisis, then financial debt crisis, then the climate change crisis, then again the COVID pandemic, and then again the war, and then again whatever, the energetic crisis, the food crisis, and so on, the migrant crisis. So they say, I mean, most of people talk about perma-crisis, so it's a normalization of a protracted period of instability and insecurity. But what happened is that this crisis, this European crisis, served as an engine to the justification of the shift of power to the expert, to the executives. Why so? Why we delegated, because of crisis, the power to experts? Because crisis implies 4 main things, and this is common to every kind of crisis. Crisis, first of all, implies a sense of urgency. So we need to have a fast response. We have to act it now. This is common, I repeat, to every crisis. Should it be economic crisis, war crisis, or epileptical crisis, we have to act, we have to do it now. The consequence of this sense of urgency is that we don't only have to respond fastly, but we have to do it effectively. We have to give a good response in order to manage the crisis. Again, if we are in war, we need to act fast, but if we take the wrong decision, there are millions of lives at stake. Same for climate change, same for epileptic crisis. The guy in front of me will die if I don't act correctly. So these are the first 2 things. And then, because the urgency and the need of an effective response, we need specialized knowledge. Why so? Because if we go through a democratic deliberation, a democratic debate, we lose a lot of time. And we lose a lot of time acquiring knowledge. So we take someone who's already specialized in this, and we delegates the decision to him, because in this reason he is prompt in the response and we assume he's effective. Last characteristic, on this I'm not very sure, I will come back later, but they say that the specialized knowledge and the expertise in general, they imply in itself a sense of neutrality. So because of the neutrality of the scientific knowledge, we can bypass national interest or cognitive bias that we have. On this I'm not pretty sure, because we have to talk if it exists a truth in politics or not. We will go back to this later, but let's assume these are the 4 characteristics of crisis, and because of this characteristic, it happened, the shift of power. So famously, Jonathan White in 2015, he describes this phenomenon as emergency politics. And I read, he says, politics in the emergency mode is characterized by the suspension of political justification in all but its most primitive forms. So what we have, because of this characteristic, is not just the shift of power, but it's, most importantly, the avoidance of democratic channels and political conflict, political debates. Now, we assume all of this, but the point is that it's okay, we are in crisis, we delegate the decision to experts, but at some point, when does the crisis end? I mean, it seems it's not possible that we are in this period since 2008, but still, every day more experts are taking more and more decisions. So the first claim that me and Nicola make is that there is a crisis in crisis narration. There is a problem. Because possibly what we define as crisis is not just is not at all a crisis, it's just the European standard way of doing politics. And we conceive it as a crisis because it's the European politics, because of its supranationality, it's complicated, it's more intricate, it is serpentine. And so for this reason, it has the appearance of a crisis. But we state that possibly we have to redefine the way in which we define crisis, because otherwise, since we are used to national politics, everything can be a crisis, and so there is this delegation of power without justification. So if this claim that we make is true, we have 2 consequences. Because of the intricateness of the European politics and its complexity, we do need expertise. Because it's like this, there are some things that we didn't study, we need at some point, at some level, we need specialists. But as it is configured today, so as I just explained, with just delegating the European Commission, there are not elected bodies, we have some problem of legitimacy on a normative level, and assuming that legitimacy must be democratic at some point. Why I say normative legitimacy? Because on the other hand, we noticed an important trend that maybe I will categorize as descriptive legitimacy. So on the side of descriptive legitimacy, on the belief that we have in the institution or the trust that we have on the European institution, we have actually another phase, because data shows that the trust and the reliance that we as European citizens have toward experts is exponentially increased, mostly after the COVID outbreak. This is showed, okay, by the Eurobarometer, but especially by Perifia. There is a Horizon 2020 project that investigated just on this, and they explain very well these trends. Just keep in mind these 2 things. We'll come back at the end on normative and descriptive legitimacy. For now, we assume we have a problem of normative legitimation. So how it works, this shift of power, how it works inside the bubble. We all know that through the reform of Lisbon Treaty, we should have at some point the ordinary legislative procedure that I will not explain, but basically the European Parliament and the European Council should have the same say on the legislative procedure, on a proposal of the Commission, of course. If the crisis were the descriptive justification of the shift of powers to the executives, Article 100/2022 of the functioning on the European Union is the normative justification. So basically, they appeal on this article, the European Commission, to justify in some way their power. And I read, what does this article say? It says, without prejudice to any other procedure provided for in the treaties, the Council, on a proposal for the Commission, may decide, in spirit of solidarity between Member States, upon the measure appropriated to economic situation, in particular if severe difficulties arise in the supply of certain products. But, more importantly, comma number 2 says, where a member state is in difficulties or is seriously threatened with severe difficulties caused by natural disaster or exceptional occurrence, very broad, beyond its control, the Council, on a proposal from the Commission, may grant under certain conditions Union financial assistance to member states concerned. The President of the Council shall inform the European Parliament. Thank you very much. So, basically, what is said in this article is that in every exceptional occurrences, that, as we said, everything can be categorized exceptional occurrences, the Council and the European Commission may put aside the European Parliament and decide. Through the interview, we discovered that actually, not only this is true, but the Council plays a minor role in this article, because since we are talking of very specific things, they are delegated to very specific department of the European Commission that has expertise on that, and then the Council just approve and then inform the Parliament. An example, very hot topic, is the negotiation of the Next Generation EU. So we are talking about this big amount of money that should be distributed through countries according to various variables, and the European Parliament has no say on this. Everything is negotiated by the Commission and the Member States. Through Article 120-22 that is coadjuvated with other Article 310 and 316 of the Treaty on Functioning of the European Union that are more concerned with the economic sphere, but this is important. So this I already said it, so if this is true, we need expertise, but why we need expertise? Because, for example, in the case of Next Generation EU, there are a lot of variables that we have to keep into consideration, and we need specialized knowledge on these. We need to understand how many money does a country need, why, for what they have to be spent. So we need to understand the condition of the country, we need national experts and so on. But these, again, the experts for now are just in the European Commission and they are not elected. So the question is, can at some point the European Parliament internalize this kind of expertise and impact on the decision-making process? The answer is yes. And let's see how. First of all, we have to understand that the European Parliament is not just composed by European parliamentarians, but it's actually composed by a lot of other auxiliary bodies. So there is this huge structure in Place Luxembourg, and it has a lot of bureaus. And who are they? They are, first of all, the committees of the European Parliament. Then we have the assistants of the European Parliament that are hired on a fiducial base, then the officials and the subunits that are hired through contest, and then the secretariats, the bureau, the staff researchers, the research center, more importantly, the European Parliament Research Service, think tanks, etc. So we have a lot of bodies coadjuvating and orbitating around the European Parliament. Now, and these are expert bodies, so they have at some point some specialization on some very specific topic. How do they help? They help both in the ordinary legislative procedure and both beyond the legislative procedure. I will go very quick here because I will explain later, but basically what they do is to teach, more or less, to give knowledge or give specific information to the European parliamentarians during the legislative process, and to help in the resolution that are way more, there are more resolution than decision because they have no legal value, but still also in the resolution that they should give a political guidelines. In every resolution you will find attached another resolution from a scholar, from a think tank working for the European Parliament, saying that this is right, so giving knowledge expertise to say he is not saying stupid things, he is right and we know he is right. But more importantly, we notice that there is an increasing influx of specialized expertise, or if we want, expertization processes within the legislative branch that can be identified as follow. We have the specialization of parliamentarians' work within sectorially specified committees, so they divide themselves. Then we have an increase in parliamentary staff resource. We have a big use of public hearings, lobbies, interest group that provides expert information, and also we have the interrogation on some new media speaking to the truth. Then we have also the organization of the capacity of the European Parliament in specialized advisory position that can be permanent or temporary, and or the advisory unit within always the organization of the European Parliament. An example are officers or subunits, and which is their role. They are expected to be oriented toward an expert role with full-time permanent staff that are specializing in producing professional advice, information, and knowledge. But what I think is the most important thing beyond this that deserves attention is the role of the European Parliament Research Service. So the European Parliament Research Service, it follows the dynamics of the Joint Research Center of the European Commission, but it was created in 2013, especially to face this big crisis that we are told we are in. And why is so important the European Parliament Research Service? Because he is an independent body that works for the European Parliament. What does it mean? It means that he makes all his research beyond the legislative process, and when parliamentarians need, he coadjuvated the parliamentarians before the proposal, during the proposal, and after the proposal, because also he is equipped with specialized body that can understand if the implementation of the policy is correct or not. An interview, I don't remember which one is it, I think to the Secretary of the European Parliament President says, the European Parliament Research Service, it worked in advance of Commission's concrete single proposal, producing regulatory material based on strategic guidelines drawn up at the beginning of the Commission President terms of office, which will be translated into Commission annual work program. Its role is present during all the time of policy-making process, before, during, and after. Why we believe this is really, really important? Because the European Parliament is, for us, or could be, let's say, the exemplification of democratic balances between the technical and the political. We have technicality because it is equipped with technical bodies, but we have still the political guidelines. So the democratic balances is configured as follows. We have experts that they work more in the discretion of the first version of policy making, and so in the normative implementation, and they work in specific policy output because they are expert in a specific thing. And then at the same time, we have the political control. So the politician, the European politician, they remain in control of the work portfolio, they remain in control of policy objectives, and they remain in control of the line. Why the political line? Why it's important, the political line? Because it reflects the political will. And so, to go back on what I said before, national interests are not bypassed. We keep into consideration national interests that for us are important if we are talking about an European Union that should be a political integration also. Now, what we just said is very descriptive, but how it applies to the theory of legitimacy, I will be fast because I'm out of time already, but basically what we know, the theory of legitimacy, it's huge and immense. How we have to legitimize a political authority, it's a mess, but it's not like this at the supranational level. So while there is a very huge literature in general of the justification of statal authority, I think there are very few theories that succeeded at supranational level. And there have been people who tried to surpass this paradigm, but today this is the major paradigm that we have. And this is the input-output paradigm of legitimacy, idealized by Scharf in late 90s, I think, and is still here. So basically, until now, we can legitimize as supranational entities either or based on the input side and on the output side. What does it mean? It means that as supranational entities, like the European Union in this case, is legitimized if it is democratic in a sense, so if it reflects the democratic will, if its procedure is correct, so it's democratic, or on the base of its efficacy. So if what it creates, the policy that it makes are actually correct or good for us. What is the point? The point is that they try to say, also Scharf itself, they try to say that these input and output side are not exclusionary, but today, as it is configured, the European Union, we are justifying this project just on the output side. So we are justifying the legitimacy of the shift of power to expertise is justified because they say it is effective. So we justified it with crisis, with Article 100/2022, and because it is effective. What we claim, and then I finish, Nicola will explain better, is that we explored how it is composed, the European Parliament, and the tools that the European Parliament can have. So we claim that this can be a good summary, a good middle ground between input and output and between normative and descriptive legitimacy. Why? Because it can institutionalize and politicize expertise. As I said, we need expertise, but we also need legitimacy, and the European Parliament can do it well. We call this model, arbitrarily, abusively, we call knowledge-based democratic legitimacy. That should be a link between input and output, trying to make efficient decisions because we are equipped with expertise, but staying within the democratic perimeters. So why I say that it provides you with legitimacy both at the normative and at the descriptive level, because normatively it's the only, and I think, amazing body that we have who is directly elected at the supranational level, so it has normative legitimacy even though it's equipped with expertise. So with non-elected body, we still have the control of the political line. So we are not in a technocracy, but we keep control. And descriptive level, because at some point, if we as citizens rely on expertise, why not rely on interiorized and politicized expertise? So we can solve this problem having a procedurally correct mode of doing politics and also efficient. On an institutional level, the only thing to do, I mean, we already have everything, the only things to do will be to modify these articles that I talked about, the 100/2022. There is nothing to do, and also the article 310 and 316. And this is important because if we want to integrate, we don't have to do it just economically, but also politically, and we think that possibly this can be a good way to go toward this path. So, nothing, I'm finished, and I leave Nicola for taking the comments. Thank you.
Carolina.
Bueno, muchas gracias. Bueno, un placer estar aquí nuevamente en estos encuentros y volver a hablar también en estos encuentros. Bueno, voy a hacer algunos comentarios. El primer comentario es que la exposición y el paper hay algunas diferencias. Yo, claro, al escribir mi comentario lo hice en base al paper, entonces va a haber cuestiones que comente aquí que ni siquiera fueron mencionadas, ¿sí? Y va a haber cuestiones que iba a comentar y se moderaron en la exposición, ¿sí? Lo primero que quería decir, además hubo un comentario, me llamó mucho la atención la diferencia entre el tipo de paper y el tipo de tu exposición. Son muy buenos complementos, porque tu exposición es muy fresca, muy auténtica, muy, ¿cómo te puedo decir?, enriquecedora, y el paper es un paper quirúrgico, ¿sí? O sea, es un paper que el cirujano abrió el tajo que tenía que abrir, sacó el órgano que funcionaba mal y lo volvió a coser, ¿sí? Estos papers quirúrgicos son fantásticos porque uno no pierde el tiempo con exploraciones clínicas, ¿sí? Pero a veces pecan de falta de profundidad. Y esto es lo que me parece que le tengo que criticar a este paper, que si tengo que decir una crítica, tal vez la más radical, no quisiera que el paper sea una guerra de eslóganes, ¿sí? Y tengo la sensación que por ahora lo es. Permacrisis versus democratic, ¿cómo es que lo llamáis? Knowledge-based democratic legitimacy, ¿sí? Entonces, me parece que a los dos eslóganes hay que explotarlos un poco más, ¿sí? O sea, llenarlos de contenido o criticarlos. Entonces, voy un poco primero a un comentario que está en el paper, o sea, que lo puedo atribuir al paper, pero que no se reprodujo en tu exposición, lo cual me parece bien. Durante la lectura del paper, uno tiene la sensación de que ustedes no disienten con la descripción de permacrisis, ¿sí? Uno lee el paper y parece que está justificado que la Unión Europea desde 2008 se encuentra en un estado permanente de crisis. Y en las conclusiones, de pronto, dicen, no, esto no está para nada justificado, con lo cual a mí me parece totalmente un acierto, estoy completamente de acuerdo, pero creo que hay que criticar más duramente desde el principio la idea de permacrisis, mucho más desde el principio. Se me ocurrió, siguiendo con los eslóganes, que lo que vive la Unión Europea es una normalidad convulsa o una complejización de la realidad, pero que de ninguna manera me parece aceptable el término de permacrisis, ¿sí? Entonces, me parece que tendría que ser desde el principio más atacado. Fíjate que en un momento ustedes dicen, this term aptly captures the normalization of a protracted period of instability and insecurity. The perpetuation of this state of political tension has far-reaching normative and moral implications. Pareciera que ustedes no lo están discutiendo desde el principio, ¿sí? Entonces este es un consejo que no, para modificar, pero que no se dio en tu exposición, que fuiste muy clara desde el inicio. Yo tengo una pregunta, que es una pregunta muy objetiva, porque en el texto no se dice cuántas de las crisis o de las regulaciones tomadas a partir de situaciones que se consideran de crisis fueron tomadas bajo el artículo 122. Se mencionan como que hubo dos, ¿sí? Y si esto es así, entonces no todo está justificado bajo el paraguas de la crisis, ¿sí? Entonces, porque creo que hay muy buenas razones para seguir el rumbo que ustedes están pensando, pero que podrían justificarse sin necesidad de la crisis, ¿no? Y creo que hay muchos parlamentos también que están tomando estos caminos con distintos modelos. No sé si conoces el proyecto POST, no. Del British, bueno, el Parlamento británico tiene una oficina dentro del Parlamento que se llama POST, como si fuese correo, que es un organismo de asesoría científica permanente dentro del Parlamento, y mucho más cercana en el tiempo y en el espacio tenemos el grupo Ciencia en el Parlamento de España, que es que lograron un lugar permanente en el Parlamento español que asesora. Entonces, no me parece que sea tan un challenge tan alto el que ustedes hacen, ¿no? Está ocurriendo en muchas partes del mundo que el trabajo experto y el trabajo democrático se pueden reunir. Creo también que, y lo explican muy bien ustedes, el diseño institucional europeo es un diseño que tira, ¿sí? que se orienta hacia el ejecutivismo, ¿sí? Más las, tú lo llamas constitutional practices, ¿sí?
Sí.
Informal constitutional practices. Yo creo que son instituciones informales, no son prácticas, y que se podría beneficiar mucho el paper de la lectura de todo lo que es instituciones informales en política, como Helmke y Levitsky, O'Donnell mismo, Victoria Murillo, que han estudiado muy bien cómo las instituciones informales, ¿sí? moldean a las instituciones formales en política. Incluso más, de estos trabajos que menciono de Helmke y Levitsky, hay muchos que se ocupan de ver cómo las instituciones informales aumentan el presidencialismo, ¿sí? Creo que la única excepción es Chile, que lo moderó, las instituciones informales moderaron el hiperpresidencialismo de la Constitución, pero en el resto pareciera que los hiperpresidencialismos, las instituciones informales tienden a aumentarlo. Entonces yo creo que también hay un diseño institucional, ¿sí? que ustedes lo consideran lo explican muy bien, ¿sí? que tiende hacia este ejecutivismo, si se quiere, por no llamarlo presidencialismo. Entonces, algunas cosas más. Creo que el paper se beneficiaría de alguna conceptualización más clara de la idea de expertos, ¿sí? Expertos pueden ser un montón de cosas. Y creo que también el paper se beneficiaría de una propuesta, digamos, meterse un poco más en el agua, no ser tan quirúrgicos, de una propuesta institucional de expertización de la legislatura o del Parlamento, ¿sí? ¿Por qué? Porque no es lo mismo cómo funciona la Post Office en Gran Bretaña que cómo los diputados argentinos me han respondido a mí. Nosotros sí hacemos legislación basada en la evidencia porque recibimos un informe técnico del Ministerio y esto no es lo mismo, ¿sí? Entonces, ¿qué modelo de institucionalización de la expertise queremos para el ámbito legislativo, ¿sí? Y esto también te ayudaría a definir un poco qué es un experto en el ámbito legislativo, ¿sí? ¿Qué más? Y bueno, algún comentario sobre la legitimidad. Sobre la legitimidad, tú aquí mencionaste las dos versiones, sí, pero en el paper no se menciona una sola, sí. Y este era uno de mis comentarios. Haces toda una descripción de las normas y cuando llega el momento de decir si hay legitimación normativa, no dicen nada. Y yo creo que la hay. No sé, ¿me entiendes lo que te quiero decir? Sí. Hay legitimación normativa para que en estado de crisis se use el 122, para que en no estado de crisis haya una ejecutivización de la legislación. No parece que hubiera una falta de legitimidad normativa. Pero en el paper no se habla de esto. En el paper solo se usa la versión descriptiva, que es aquella empírica de la percepción de las personas. Y entonces hay un salto. ¿Me entiendes? Tú vienes explicando toda la cuestión jurídica, normativa, de cómo se llega a las decisiones legislativas en la Unión Europea en tiempos de crisis o no, y luego dices, bueno, pero acá hay un problema de legitimación. ¿Sí? Creo que podés estudiar o analizar las dos cosas como lo hiciste en la exposición. Ahora bien, me gusta la idea de Knowledge-Based Democratic Legitimacy, me gusta mucho, pero le falta contenido. Por ahora es un eslogan que es un eslogan permacrisis contra esto, digamos. Le falta realmente darle un contenido. Y entonces tengo que hacer una observación. Tengo la impresión, por lo que transmite el paper, que la ventaja de esta propuesta de ustedes sería combinar el input y el output, ¿verdad? Y el input es la representatividad o la representación y el output es la eficacia de la decisión. Ahora, yo creo que hay una pata más para agregar, que no está explorada que es la legitimidad epistémica de la deliberación, ¿sí? Que no es lo mismo que el valor epistémico de la democracia, que es lo que habla Estlund y más cercanamente Sebastián Linares, etc. Acá yo estoy diciendo que hay una relevancia epistémica en la deliberación, ¿sí? Y que este modelo que ustedes proponen casaría muy bien con esto, ¿sí? Bien, y para terminar, sobre el valor epistémico de la deliberación y la toma de evidencia científica para la legislación, incluso ya los tribunales se están metiendo en esto. No sé si conoces, pero hay muchas sentencias de tribunales nacionales, pero también supranacionales, que están evaluando el nivel deliberativo en la toma de decisiones, ¿sí? Y están diciendo que ciertas normas no son válidas porque no se deliberaron conscientemente o profundamente. Incluso tengo aquí una sentencia del Tribunal de Justicia de la Unión Europea que dice, encima están, digamos, diciendo que no es aplicable una norma dictada no por el Parlamento, sino por el Consejo y la Comisión, ¿sí? Dice, nada indica que al adoptar el artículo 44 bis, el Consejo y la Comisión hayan tomado en consideración otras formas de publicación de la información relativa a los beneficiarios afectados que respetasen el objetivo perseguido por dicha publicación y al mismo tiempo fueran menos lesivas para el derecho de las personas beneficiarias. Así, a la hora de ponderar equilibradamente los diversos intereses en conflicto, las instituciones hubieran debido analizar la cuestión de si una publicación de datos nominales limitada habría bastado o no para alcanzar los objetivos. Le está diciendo, usted tiene que deliberar para convencerme de que su norma es válida. Y después hay otra sentencia que me interesó mucho también del Tribunal Europeo, que es todo lo contrario. Dice, una ley sobre reproducción asistida había sido cuestionada y lo que dice el Tribunal Europeo es, esto lo voy a considerar dentro del margen de apreciación porque fue debidamente deliberado. Porque el Parlamento, al discutir esta ley, tomó en consideración todas las cuestiones que podría haber considerado, la mejor evidencia científica, etcétera, etcétera. ¿Sí?
¿El Tribunal Europeo de Derechos Humanos o el Tribunal de...?
No, ahora estoy en el Tribunal Europeo de Derechos Humanos. He cambiado de tribunal. Ahora estoy... Y primero, el que leí la sentencia fue el Tribunal de Justicia de la Unión Europea. Este es el Tribunal Europeo de Derechos Humanos en el caso Evans contra Gran Bretaña. Entonces... y después hay dos sentencias más muy interesantes. Una que muchos de aquí de Girona la conocen bien, que es una sentencia de Colombia, ¿sí? De un tribunal administrativo, pero que quedó firme y entonces tiene un impacto en la política pública muy grande, en donde se discutía el etiquetado frontal. Y la discusión no era si etiquetado frontal sí o no, era mucho más sutil, era etiquetado frontal con círculos o con hexágonos, ¿sí? La evidencia científica decía que los hexágonos eran mejores, ¿sí? Y el tribunal dice que la ley debió tomar en consideración la mejor evidencia científica libre de intereses, ¿sí? Esa es una. Y la otra es del Tribunal Constitucional de Brasil, que declara inconstitucional una ley de prevención de la obesidad porque el Parlamento había aceptado como uno de los medicamentos a incluir en el plan de lucha contra la obesidad un anorexígeno que el organismo de regulación del medicamento brasilero, como la EMA brasilera, digamos, había dicho que no era seguro, ¿sí? Entonces, declaran la inconstitucionalidad de una ley por una cuestión de falta de consenso científico en la inclusión. Entonces digo, los tribunales ya están empezando a evaluar estas dos cosas. Y nada, más agua para vuestro molino. Nada más, gracias.